The ledger is written on a wax tablet, and it is already wrong by the time the slave finishes carving it, because you bought 2 more buildings while he was writing. 200 million sesterces, every apartment block on 3 streets in the Subura. 500 men you own by their first names. You are 39 years old, it is a hot night in Rome, and the men at your table have just agreed, quietly, that you are the richest human being alive. It is the smallest fortune in this story. This is your life as the richest person alive, again and again, across 3,000 years. 7 fortunes, each one larger than the one before it. 7 times the world stops and agrees on a single name, and every single one of those names ends in the same 2 square meters of ground. Rank 1, the fire. You do not make your money from land or from war or from the good opinion of the Senate. You make it from panic. Rome is built of wood and packed so tight that a spark on one street is a funeral on the next. So you build the thing the city does not have. 500 slaves, trained, waiting, hoses and buckets and hooks. When a building catches, they run. But they do not put the fire out. Not yet. You walk to the owner while his home is burning and you offer to buy it. The price is low because the alternative is ash, and the man agrees because you have made the alternative the only other choice. The moment the deed changes hands, your men move. You rebuild, you rent it back to the same street it came from. By 40, you own a quarter of the city this way, one catastrophe at a time. The men who work stone and paint for you are the best in Rome, and they are the best because they are yours. Bought at the auction blocks and trained in your own workshops, so that even the labor that builds your walls is another thing you own outright. You do not pay a wage you cannot avoid. You do not lose a coin you can keep. A senator jokes at dinner that no man is truly rich until he can raise an army on his own money, and you know he means it as a limit, a ceiling on what wealth should reach for. You hear it as a shopping list. You crush the slave revolt in 71 BC because the Senate will not, and you line the Appian Way with 6,000 crucified men so that everyone walking to Rome understands who restored order. You buy the 3rd seat in a government of 3. You are the money behind the men with the names. And it is never enough, because a man named Pompey has glory, and a young man named Caesar has the crowd. And glory is the one thing you cannot purchase with the largest fortune in the world. So at 59 you march east to conquer Parthia, to buy with a war the reputation your money would not buy. At Carrhae it goes wrong in the heat, in the sand, with your son's head on a spear. The story they tell after is that they poured molten gold down your throat, so that in death you could finally have your fill. You are the richest man in the world for 20 years. You do not get to keep the 21st. Rank 2, the gold. You are the emperor of Mali, and you are so rich that no one in your kingdom has ever finished counting it. Your wealth is not a number, it is a color. It is the yellow of half the gold on earth, pulled from mines you do not visit, moved by rivers you do not name. In 1324 you leave for Mecca. You are 38, and you do not travel the way men travel. 60,000 people walk with you. 12,000 servants in silk. 80 camels, and each camel carries 300 pounds of gold dust, and ahead of the whole ocean of you walk 500 men with golden staffs, so that the desert itself knows something enormous is passing through it. In Cairo, you give the gold away, to the poor, to the officials, to anyone whose hand is open. You give so much of it, for so many weeks, that the price of gold in Egypt collapses and does not recover for 12 years. One man's generosity becomes an entire region's recession. That is what your money is. Not a sum, a weather. On the road you feel, for one moment, the edge of it. A traveler from the north tells you the price of a thing in his country, and you do not know the number, because in your life you have never once needed to ask what something costs. You have builders who invent your palaces overnight to keep you pleased. You have a court poet whose only job is to describe you back to yourself. And still, at the wells, when your 60,000 drink, you are the one who counts the days of water, because a man can own half the gold on earth, and there is no gold in the desert, only distance, and distance does not take payment. You come home and you build a great mosque at Jinguereber in Timbuktu, finished in 1327, its walls raised from mud and genius. You fill the city with scholars and books until men travel a year to read there. You bring back an architect from Andalusia and pay him in gold by weight, a poet's ransom for every wall he raises. 50 years after you die, a mapmaker in Majorca who has never seen Africa draws you anyway, seated on a golden throne, holding a golden nugget the size of a fist, because even in Spain they have heard there is a king made of light. They remember the throne. They forget the man who got tired sitting on it. Rank 3, the ledger. You are a banker in Augsburg, and you do not own a river of gold. You own something better. You own the debts of kings. It is the 16th century, and you have learned the thing the emperors and the popes have not, which is that the man who lends the money outranks the man who spends it. You finance wars. You finance mines in Hungary and silver in the Tyrol. You take, as collateral, the future of Europe, one signature at a time. By 1519, your fortune is nearly 2% of everything the continent produces in a year, a share of the world no single person will ever hold again. That year they hold an election for Holy Roman Emperor, and it is not really an election, it is an auction, and you are the auction house. 7 prince-electors, and each one wants gold, and the King of France is bidding against you with a treasury the size of a nation. You do not blink. You put up almost 1,000,000 florins to buy the crown for Charles, more than the yearly income of most of the kingdom's voting. He wins. He is the most powerful man in Christendom, and he owes it, personally, to your ledger. Your money is not a chest of coins in a cellar. It is a web. A letter from your house in Augsburg can move a fortune to Rome, to Antwerp, to a mine in the mountains, without a single coin leaving a single room. You have invented, almost, the idea of money as information, and it means that when a bishop needs to pay the pope, or a duke needs to raise a regiment, the message runs first to you, and you decide, at your desk, whether history that season can afford to happen. So when he is slow to remember, you write to him. You remind the emperor of the known world in a letter that without you he would not be wearing the title, and that the debt is the debt, majesty or no majesty. You are not afraid of him. Money is not afraid of crowns. You have watched too many of them come to your door. On your tomb you have them carve, in your own words, that you were second to none in the acquisition of wealth. Not a prayer, not a plea for mercy. An accounting. You confess to being great. You die in 1525, certain the number will protect you, and the number outlives you by 500 years, and it protects nothing, because there is no longer a you for it to protect. Rank 4. The Court. You are not born to it this time. You are a guard, handsome and quick, and one day in the palace the aging Qianlong Emperor of China looks at you and something in your face reminds him of a love he lost, and your whole life changes on the strength of a resemblance you did not choose. You rise the way water rises through a house that is already sinking. Minister, then more than minister, then the hand through which every decision, every appointment, every bribe in the empire must pass, and each one of them leaves a little gold in your palm as it goes by. You are 40, and you control the taxes of 1/4 of the human race, and a great deal of it forgets to arrive at the treasury and remembers instead to arrive at you. Your house has 9,000 rooms. You own pawn shops and banks and mountains of jade and pearls the size of eyes. There is a story, later, of a wall in your compound built hollow and packed solid with gold, so that the house itself is made of the money, load-bearing wealth, a home you could not spend without knocking down. When they finally count it, after, the number is monstrous, something near the entire government's revenue for 15 years, sitting inside the walls of one man who started as a guard at a door. You are not careless. You marry your son to the emperor's daughter, so that the family that could destroy you is fused to the family that is you. You place your men in every office that matters. You build the fortune the way an engineer builds a bridge, every joint doubled, every risk answered, and it holds perfectly for as long as one condition holds, and the condition is a heartbeat in a very old chest, and you have no engineering for that. But your fortune has a single load-bearing wall, and it is a very old man who loves you. In 1799, the old emperor dies. Within days, his son, who has watched you and hated you and waited, has you arrested. The charges are true, every one of them. He is generous in the end, in the way emperors are generous. He sends you a length of white silk and lets you do the last thing yourself. You are 49, the richest man in the empire, weighing a piece of cloth, in a room the state now owns. You spent your whole life buying protection, and it turned out you had only rented it, and the landlord had a son. Rank 5, the oil. You are a bookkeeper in Cleveland who does not drink, does not shout, and does not lose. You keep your ledgers in a small, careful hand, and you have noticed the one thing everyone else in the new oil business is too excited to see. The money is not in the wells. It is in the pipe between the well and the lamp. So you take the pipe, Standard Oil, 1870, and then a decade of quiet, patient swallowing. You buy your competitors, and the ones who will not sell you make friends with the railroads and starve. By your 40s, you refine 90% of the oil in America. You do not own an oil company. You own the concept of oil. You do it in the daylight and in the dark. When a rival will not sell, you go to the railroads that carry his oil, and you arrange, quietly, that they charge him more than they charge you, so much more that he cannot survive the arithmetic. And one morning he understands that the market was never the enemy, you were, and that you have been the enemy for years, without raising your voice once. Men who fought you die poor and bewildered. You send flowers. In 1911, the Supreme Court rules you a monopoly and breaks you into 34 pieces. It is meant to end you. Instead, you own a share of all 34, and each one is worth more apart than the whole was together, and the breaking makes you the first man in history worth. In the money of a later century, something like $400 billion. You cannot be ended by being divided. You are the sum, however they slice you. You hand out dimes to children on the street, one at a time, a small bright thing from the richest hand alive. You give away more than $500 million before the end. You live to 97, careful with your stomach, careful with your walks, careful with everything, because the one thing your empire cannot refine is more of you. You spend your last decades buying, in small increments, the only commodity you were ever actually short of, time. It is the one market you do not corner. Rank 6, the steel. You come off a boat from Scotland with nothing, and this is the part you will tell everyone forever, because it is the part that lets you sleep. A poor boy, a bobbin boy in a cotton mill for $1.20 a week, and then telegraph, and then railroads, and then the one bet that makes the century, that everything about to be built will be built out of steel, and you will make the steel. You do. Pittsburgh runs red with your furnaces day and night. By 1901, you are ready to be done, and a banker named Morgan meets you and asks your price for all of it, and you write a number on a slip of paper and slide it across. $480 million. He looks at it and shakes your hand and tells you that you are now the richest man in the world. The whole exchange takes less than a minute. 30 years of fire, sold in the time it takes to fold a note, and here is the part that is not on the slip of paper. In 1892, the men in your mills at Homestead ask for a fair share of the record you are setting, and you are conveniently in a castle in Scotland while your partner Frick handles it, so that your hands stay clean and your conscience stays yours. The answer that comes back, in your name, arrives on 2 barges full of 300 hired men with rifles, and by the end of a July day there are bodies on both sides of the river and the water runs the color of the furnaces. You send a telegram of support, then you go fishing. Your libraries are real. 2,500 of them, marble and quiet, your name cut into the stone over every door, so that a poor boy in any town can walk in for free and read his way out, the way you tell yourself you once did. But the money that built them was warm when it was made, and there are widows in Pennsylvania who could name the exact shift it came off. You write that the man who dies rich dies disgraced, and then you spend your final years in a race against your own bank account, trying to give it away faster than it grows, and you lose that race, and you die in 1919 with plenty left, disgraced by your own rule. Rank 7. The cloud. You do not own oil or steel or gold or the debts of kings. You own attention and code and the machines that think. It is the present tense, and you are the richest human being alive, and unlike all the others, you can watch your fortune change in real time, on a screen, a number that breathes. 300 billion. More on a good morning. It moves while you sleep, adding and losing, in a single hour, more than Crassus assembled in a lifetime of burning streets. You cannot picture it. No one can. It is not money anymore in any sense a body understands. It is a score in a game that only a few dozen people on Earth are still playing, and you are winning, and you do not remember the last time winning felt like anything. You buy the things the list expects. The rockets. The islands. The companies that make other companies small. You buy a newspaper the way Crassus bought a street, not for what it earns, but for what it can burn down. You employ a man whose entire salary, low 7 figures, exists so that you never have to open your own calendar, and you have 4 of him. And then you start buying the same thing Rockefeller bought at the end, quietly, through foundations with soft names, research into aging, into blood, into the cell that forgets how to die. You wire 9 figures to a lab in California that thinks it can add a decade, and you do not tell the board, because it is not for the company, it is for the one shareholder who cannot be diversified. You are 53, and you have understood, finally, the joke that every rich man in this story understood too late. The number can buy everything the world sells, and the world does not sell the one thing you would trade all of it to keep, so you keep working. Not because you need to, because stopping means being alone in a very large house with a number, and the number does not love you back. And it never did, and some part of you has always known it. Rank 8, the ground. You have been the richest man alive 7 times now, 21 centuries of it. And you are going to tell yourself the truth for the first time, because there is finally no one left to sell to. The gold they poured down your throat in the desert is gone. The gold you scattered across Cairo is gone, spent by the poor 1,000 years ago on bread you will never taste. The ledger that held the debt of an emperor is a curiosity behind glass. The 9,000 rooms belong to the state. Standard Oil is a name in a history book. The steel mills are a museum. The number on the screen will belong soon enough to someone whose name you would not recognize. You bought fire and armies, and the price of a continent's gold, and the taxes of a fourth of the earth. And every one of you, every single time, ended in a box the size of any other box, in ground that does not know how much was in the account, next to men who died with nothing and take up exactly as much room. The one thing none of you could buy was a way to bring it. Not a coin of it crosses over. You arrive at the end the way you arrived at the beginning, with open hands, and the only difference the fortune made was how much you had to set down. You made the world agree, over and over, that you were the richest person who ever lived. You are not sure, now, at the very end of it, that you were ever rich at all.